Committee of the Whole to order. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight, and we'll go ahead and get started. First one was racial equity, racial equality. Mr. Kelch, you brought this to the attention of the council.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and other members of council. Through the last couple months, Mr. Gabbard's not here, but he and I have been working with Pastor James, having discussion just on racial equity in Norwood, what we could do to make it better. And I think it's important for this body and all government bodies to hear, those perspectives from people that have, a varying perspective or experience than, a lot of us may have. So working with Pastor James has been, kind of eye-opening with some of the experiences, some of the people we were able to talk to and just kind of get their perspectives, in passing. Just, hey, man, sit down with us and talk about, some of your experiences, things you've kind of encountered in Norwood, from lifelong residents of color and, newer residents. So this is something that, we discussed here before, but Pastor James, had asked if we put this back on the agenda and kind of revisit. So without further ado, I would like to invite Pastor James up to speak.
Thank you so much. I'm really, not just for those of us that are here tonight or those of us that are watching tonight, in all of our lives, everybody that's here tonight, there's a thing called history. And all of us have been a part of history. All of us have been affected by history. And everyone in this room and everyone watching tonight has made history. Whether it's somebody's first time delivering a baby, that's history. Whether it's a child getting an A for the very first time, for that child, that's history. But from my perspective, the history that means the most to me, that affects people that look like me, that think like me, and that have had to live like me. I'm very proud to participate tonight because it's history. As you look across the country, you're going to see a lot of things going on. We have seen things going on. We've seen a lot of anger going on. A lot of people sit back and go, what in the world? Why are they so blasted? Don't they have common sense? Don't they know that by just ruining buildings, that's just going to further separate them from what they want? But tonight I stand before you to represent people of color. When you look back at the history of Norwood, and we all know the history. Now some may say, well, I've never known racism in Norwood. But I remember the day, imagine the pastor hanging out at a bar. And I remember telling Mr. Kelch, I said, if you don't believe me, I don't know that young man or that young woman sitting over there, but if you don't believe me, ask them what they think about Norwood. I don't know who they are, never saw them in my life. Mr. Kelch and I have not always seen eye to eye. We have not always agreed. But on that day, he asked that gentleman. And at the end of that conversation, that gentleman said, I can describe Norwood in 3 letters. And nobody had to ask what those 3 letters were. We all understood those letters to be K, K, K. Guys, Norwood has come an awful long way. So why is it in 2021 we still have people angry with all of us? Why do we have people angry with each other? Why is it that I have to do a march in this time and have to actually tell people this is the first MLK, Martin Luther King, march in Norwood's history? This is 2021. I'm not going to take up a lot of your time tonight, but I want you to know that I'm praying. Have I been angry? Yep. Am I angry? Yep. But I'm not going anywhere, guys. And the only thing that allows me to come in here and yell at you, yell at our residents, is our continuation of history. We have a council member sitting right here that can say, Pastor James hosted his event in the park, hearing every perspective. And I personally heard him being referred to in the N-word several times. This is 2021, people. Let's look around. It's time to do something different. And we've got to do it together. No more separation. No more isolation. This 13-point plan that I drafted to the city, if you look at the date, and I have copies, just so that everybody who's sitting here, or who care to have one, an active one, if you can pass it down, you can have it. This is a plan I gave to the city of Norwood in 2015. Look at the date. We're now in 2021, and we're just now getting to the table. This is a 13-point plan that I presented to numerous of our peers. And just to let you all know, if you were to talk to our current sheriff, she would tell you, oh, this is good stuff. Yeah, I'm on board. Yes, I told Pastor James, just call me, I'm there. If you talk to AFTAC and say, hey, what do you think about this? He'll say, I told Pastor James, call me, I'm there. If you talk to the leaders of other municipalities, they'll say, I've talked to Pastor James. I don't tell you all I talked to him, because I understand you'll take it and use it and turn it. But when he calls for this meeting, I'll be there with him. Number one, inclusion amongst leadership. It is no secret. What I'm asking is that we gather all of our special committees. I don't care who they are. From Norwood Together, ASAP Norwood, the schools, Mary Ronan, all of our community groups, anybody that's our recreation department, our health department, and to create a united front where we come together and we, in a positive manner, address the issues that affect people of color the most. And one of the things that really affect people of color the most is when there's not a fair, level playing field. Economic inclusion. You guys have heard me chant it on my bullhorn on the streets countless of times. When you eat, we want to eat. When you get a job, we want a job. When you get a promotion, we want a promotion. And as Mr. Braden is chuckling, for whatever reason, let me just assure you, there are hundreds of people outside of this community that have not come into the community because they've been asked to give us a chance to work together. Inclusion amongst leadership is so important. That's the number one thing on here. But how can you be included when the administration doesn't even return your calls or your emails? How can you expect to feel included when you can come to a meeting that highlights racial inclusion and you have a city council member saying this is bull malarkey? If you don't think this is real, guys, it is. more community presence, and effective relationship building strategies. Look at Evanston. Look at Over the Rhine, what they did 30 years ago. It works, guys. Because as Mr. Braden says, bull malarkey, which he didn't use that word actually, I can guarantee you, if those that are angry with our former reputation, which still plagues us today, if they were to line these streets, I guarantee you, you won't be in front of that row. But yet, just like last Wednesday, when there was a huge breakout of our youth, even when the police showed up on the scene, there were only 2 men that diverted that angry crowd. And 2 of those men are in this room right now, sirs. Myself and Mr. Kelch. The N-word was being flared openly. And one older black gentleman said to the officers, y'all got to do something about this nonsense. They're just openly talking about us like this. There was no mediation, no intervention. There were 2 men on the scene. And by the end of it, the one Caucasian young man, I snatched him up and I said, boy, give me a hug. We're not going backwards here. We're going forward. Watch your mouth and let's represent Norwood. He gave me a hug back and he said, Pastor James, I'm sorry. The African American young man, I pulled him up. He shook my hand and he said, Pastor James, I'm sorry. We've got to have more community presence and effective relationship building strategies. Number 3, which I presented to our chief years ago, up to 13 surveillance cameras strategically placed in specific areas. I even earmarked, and I met with the chief, and I earmarked the areas. I even had a company willing to support and sponsor us. What happened with that idea? Where's the chief? What happened? Reinvesting in our youth. If we don't make a specific game plan. I met with the law committee and we talked about diversion programs. And I gave you the specific names of the individuals that have worked with me for years helping some at-risk youth. I was just in court the other day, and as I told the judge, I'll tell you, we have an impeccable record of transitioning folks from trouble to victory, if given an opportunity. Non-traditional mentors assigned to at-risk youth. You know, we try to put up status quo to say, well, if you're going to work with the youth, these are the parameters. This is what you need. All of those parameters might be good and well. But these kids out here that Mr. Kelch and I encountered the other day, they ain't interested in that. You got to bring a real brother that ain't scared, that'll put them in their place or on their backside if they attack. For them to be able to sit down and listen, because some of those at-risk youth are tomorrow's future for you and I and our families and this community. We have to get in their lives. So I'm trusting that, and I understand we have some limitations in scheduling, conflicts, things that everybody has stuff going on, but I pray that that'll come to fruition here in the next few months. Those programs work, guys. Programs and resources for parents of at-risk youth. You got to get into the homes. But if they don't trust you, they ain't talking to you. Some of you all have coached right here in Norwood. And you spend time with our youth every day. But when it really comes down to the core of what's going on with them, they ain't talking to you. You have no clue. Especially people of color. Because whatever they do present, it's oftentimes used against us. Heavy emphasis on after-school programs. Imagine that. There's a wonderful program right here in Norwood called Elevations Enrichment. I know a little bit about the program. I think I've met the woman who runs it. Happens to be my wife. We have a minority-based, non-profit organization right here in our community. I think we need to do more of it. A youth community forum, diversion options of legal penalties, regular town hall and community meetings. And on that one, guys, I'm going to recommend that we start like Evanston did years ago, and Walnut Hills did, and Over the Rhine did. And we allow, which I mentioned this again in 2015, Mr. Bonzo was here, bring together a community advisory, or I don't care what we call it, but a group of residents that are not traditionally connected with status quo, and bring them to the forefront and allow them to have part in just being a part. Like, you might know the first name here, Lemuel James. Kind of know that guy. He lives in my house. Nobody in this city would say Lemuel is not an ace in the hole for our community. Rich and Patty McVeigh on Elm Street. Mr. Johnny, who owns Quick Pick, the store. I was just saw him today, and again gave me a big hug and said, Pastor, I'm with you. We need this. Chris and Nick Taylor. Olivia McNair. Some of you know her. She owns a bar here. Amy and Joe Lisenek. Pastor Joe Faust. Cindy Tincher. Julie and Fred Strobel. Ola Tia. Ty from Sandwich Shop by BP. These are just some names. Did you notice something that's not on the list, guys? Nowhere on the list did you see Pastor Sonny James. I don't come to you all because I want something from you. In fact, Mr. Bonzo can tell you all, in 2015, when we promoted professional boxing and MMA shows, we committed to do a show. And do you know the only and all of the proceeds, I said, we'll give the city all the money. I offered that. The response was, well, you need this, you have to have insurance. And I said, we do pro shows, guys. Don't you know you have to have all of that already? So we were turned down and not worked with. 4 days later, we did a fundraiser at our rec center, and they raised $82 selling candles. But yet, these ideas just go unaddressed. I want us to bring together a community council of residents that's not a part of status quo, to come together, to be able to, if nothing else, just meet. But they're not connected with the same old, guys. Because I'm going to be calling a meeting here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to invite every organization, everybody who's a part of anything here, the health department. Leslie Stevenson is here. Thank God. Good to see her with ASAP Norwood, our health department, our rec department, Baby Bear. Mr. Ron Murphy, our chief, our fire chief, our law director, the mayor's safety service director, our women's club, Mary Ronan with the school, Pastor Josh Stockton, Pastor Chuck, Donna Lake, Mr. Ken Miracle, president of council, all of our city council members, Norwood Strong, all those that run the apps that govern Norwood, the Norwood Political Women's Group. And I want to show you, if you don't know why people are so angry, when you talk about systemic, the reason we cannot advance as fast as we should is because we have systemic protocols that we operate under. And that means the left corner is connected to the bottom. The bottom is connected to the right bottom. The right bottom is connected to the right top. And they all think alike, and they all protect their status quo. I'll give you an example. Just a few days ago, I won't blast them on this meeting. I'm saving that for a regular council meeting. But there's a business owner. I have a senior citizen who was just catapulted out of a vehicle, 2 of them, well in their 70s. They had to be sawed out of a vehicle. And I saw a property available for rent, and I called. And as soon as the owner knew that they were talking to Pastor James, he chuckled and said, oh, it's not available. Oh, it's not? Oh. Yeah. It's not going to be available to June of next year. We use our own protocols to justify and to protect our systemic processes. Sure, we have groups popping up that bring in African Americans, but they're bringing in African Americans that very few have been a part of the real issues. I'm going to leave you with this, unless you have some questions. Why is it in May 19th of 2015, this is a letter that I personally drafted to everybody and anybody who thought they were somebody in this community. Greetings, fellow residents and or community leader. This is Pastor Sonny James. I pray this greeting finds you in good health and excellent spirit. In lieu of all the past and recent tensions within our community, an invitation was extended to the United States Department of Justice to consider coming to Norwood and assist our community and its leadership in healing, strengthening existing relationships among our community leadership. Our goal is to help advance our awesome community into being a trailblazer that hopefully the rest of the country could potentially use as a model. To our excitement, the invitation was well received and accepted. As a result, you are hereby cordially invited to join a small selected group of community leaders and residents as we welcome the Community Relations Services, CRS, of the United States Department of Justice to Norwood, Ohio. It is with great joy that our community collaboration, A New Day in Norwood, agreed to host the occasion. With that being said, I personally have had numerous dialogue with CRS regarding their visit. Let me assure you that this gathering is not intended to be a finger-pointing or bad-mouthing experience, much like other events facilitated by A New Day in Norwood, because our goal at that time was to be positive. Our goal at that time was to include Norwood. Our goal at that time was to address systemic racism that have plagued our community. And so we formed a name called A New Day in Norwood, which really later shocked me. Like the community forum held in March of 2015 at Xavier's campus, this is to be a positive experience for all of us. CRS is often referred as America's peacemaker. Their initial meeting with us will be rolled out as an orientation and unified training for us in attendance. Most communities that receive this service and training from CRS does so usually after mayhem has broken out in their city. CRS is coming to Norwood with the focus of being assisting our unified leadership in formulating a positive and proactive approach to community reconciliation. A New Day in Norwood consists of positive, community-minded clergy, business owners, and residents who came together to assist in the healing and reconciliation of our community. We certainly need to revisit that and all those that participated. This will be the very first initiative that is paired national exposure that the collaborative will host and help facilitate. It is imperative that we together show a strong, unified front before CRS. The United States Department of Justice, although many of us in our professional lives have had extensive training, like our police department, as seen across the country, when chaos hits, even the police at times have to rely on various leadership within the community. CRS provides the experience and training needed to proactively arm our community leadership with a game plan, strategy, and training that we will put our team in unification. So in the God forbidden event of widespread violence, unrest within our community, we together will already have been trained by some folks. And I'll get down to the bottom of this. There were a few parameters with that meeting. Nobody was able to be allowed to be told where they would be meeting. The only point person that they had was myself personally. Nowhere in that letter was there negativity. Nowhere in that invite was there anything bad. Nowhere in that proposal did I ever intend to expose the bad that we've had just to leave it there. And at the end of the day, when the Department of Justice came to Norwood, 15 minutes before it started, some of the same folks that run our programs in Norwood now gathered together and decided not to address the issues at hand. And so here we are, 6 years later. You have an angry juicy fruit called Pastor James ripping and roaring through the neighborhood, upset, because we're just not addressing the issues. And I'll save my comments on the N-word for our city council meeting here coming up next week. But guys, it's time now that we actually come to the table. And when we have council members that are willing to facilitate these meetings and to embrace people, to come together, we got to embrace them. And it's not always about Pastor Sonny. But it's also not always about avoiding people that can get the job done either. And I stand before you, well qualified, well trained, proven, track record. Just go to the city of Cincinnati and ask. People like Charlie Winburn on the streets every week, running off dope dealers. Guys, this is a beautiful community. But if we do not focus on making history and making it together, I'm not going to stand in front of my peers asking them not to come into this beautiful community. They can come any day and every day. But just as Julie Strobel in Ward 1 will tell you, that day that guy pulled up on her and her fiance with a firearm. And the only person that intervened and stopped that, you're looking at him. There was no police. There was nobody there. It was me. And to be in a community where not even the police would say, thank you. Not even our leadership to say, we appreciate it. There's something wrong. And even Mr. Kelch recently has been targeted. I don't stand with people because of the color of their skin. I stand with people because of the character. And when I walk away from you, you probably want to look in the mirror and check your character. Guys, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. As I've said many and many a times, over my dead body. And when I say that, I mean it. We're going to change. But we've got to do it together. And it's got to start with us coming together, creating a group of citizens that are not a part of our traditional status quo. But we're going to start, Mr. President, by inviting everybody who's involved in any facet of Norwood to the table. And then when they're all there, if they'll come. But it doesn't matter if they don't, because there are plenty of people on the outside who are very curious to see, why is he always so upset? Why doesn't he get return calls? What's going on? And when they do create other programs, and you want to include black people, why aren't they included? What have they done? I have, and I will, challenge status quo, no matter what, no matter who, no matter when, no matter where, over my dead body. Because I have a 9-year-old daughter who one day may decide to run for leadership positions in this community. And if we don't break up status quo, she'll never have a shot at it. And as Deion Sanders recently said, he said, I believe that I've been sent here to challenge status quo. And I ain't going nowhere. Guys, I believe I've been sent here to Norwood to challenge status quo. And I ain't going nowhere. So why not work together? And some of you know, if you just get past all the malarkey, if you get past all the bad stuff, Matt can tell you, we haven't always seen eye to eye. In fact, it got pretty hairy one night. But now we can laugh about it. If you just get to understand people who are different. And as he explained himself, I had to go, my bad. Oh, okay, my bad. And as other council members have come to some of our events, you've heard people talk from their heart. We have to change. And we can only get there by two ways. Together or be exposed. I'm just ready for either one of them. We've got great people here in this community, guys. They say Al Capone was a great dude. In fact, they used to say if you go to his community and see anything bad about him, he'll have a whole bunch of old people beating on you. He built schools, orphanages, churches. He did some great work. He just had one bad flaw. He killed people for a living. In Norwood, guys, we've got some great people. We just have a few flaws. But we can get past those together. And Mr. Braden, I want to say to you, on behalf of people of color, everybody's time is important. And sometimes it's easy to misinterpret what one person is trying to say. But in this sensitive era that we're walking in now, if I walk through the door and I hear somebody, and I don't hear someone call the N-word, and I jump in to be a hero, do you know how easy it is for the whole world watching to think that that's you? To think that that's your heart? And then you find yourself having to defend who you are, knowing that you only meant to do something good, knowing that you didn't mean how it looked. So, Mr. Braden, my challenge to you, sir, which I would have said to anybody if they had did what you did, when you stand before people of color and they're addressing things that are so sensitive to them, whether you agree with them or not, don't embarrass our city by chuckling and openly saying words, "This is bull,"
Is
which
it
you
my turn to
did.
respond yet?
And
Is it my turn to
even
respond
if,
yet? I'd like to respond. I'd like to respond.
even if,
Mr. Brady. Let pass.
even
He's
if,
attacking me.
Then I'll give you.
even
He's
if,
attacking me.
even if people misunderstand what we're saying.
You got that right.
Even if they wouldn't misunderstand if we don't walk it out the way we walk it out. So I want to applaud the rest of you. No matter what you think of me, number one, I don't care what you think. Because I'm not standing here for me. I'm standing here for that third grader at Sharpsburg. I'm standing here for that fourth grader at Williams. That one day may have a dream to be somebody. One day, they might actually wake up and say, "Mom, you think I can be mayor in Norwood one day?" And one day they may turn on the television and they may watch us. They may listen to what we say. And when that next black child hears a white person in leadership say, "This is bull malarkey," they may not understand what that means.
But you do.
So let's make sure that we respect everybody. Don't talk to me because you think you know me. I don't stand here because I'm the only black man in Norwood that wants an opportunity. So what we do is we bring them on in and line them up. And one after another, let me see how many you say, "This is some bull malarkey." I'm not here to attack, gentlemen. I didn't come here for that. I came here because it's time. I'm honored. I'm honored. Mr. Kelch can tell you. Mr. Gabbard can tell you. Mr. Geraci can tell you. We may not have always agreed. Mr. Thompson can tell you. We may not always have seen eye to eye, but we haven't come to blows either. And you know why? Close. You know why? Because at the end of the day, Mr. Kelch looks at me and says, "You know what? Let me find something that he lied about. Let me find something that's not true." And since 2015, I haven't heard one challenge, legitimate challenge, about anything that's been presented. And I've never asked this city for a dime. In fact, I've offered. But because of our status quo, our offers have gone rejected. So, on behalf of any person of color that I may have embarrassed or misspoken for or unfairly represented tonight in anything that I've done or said, let me do what I expect everybody else to do. I apologize. It is me. I take full responsibility and I vow to try my best never to do it again. Because as I stand for you, like the great, late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, I may not be there when you get there. But as I stand today, this is history in the making. And it ain't always pretty, baby. Sometimes you got to get in the mucky muck. But guys, let's start by opening the door for other people who are not connected to the status quo to get involved. And it doesn't take somebody who's connected to go and introduce themselves to somebody of color just because people want to be engaged and involved. We've got people in this community who would love to be involved. They're just never asked. And they're never asked because they don't think like our status quo. God bless you all. My prayer is that if there's a third grader or a fourth grader at Sharpsburg Elementary School listening or watching right now, my prayer is at the end of this they might say, you know what, I might have a shot. I might be able to do something. But economic inclusion is so important. And when you hear me talking about building it black, we've got to. We've got to open up opportunities. You can't tell me. Just look at all of our committees. You'll notice one thing. They're all connected. Look at all of our jobs. The majority of them. Look at all of our community programs. Look at all of them. Bring them all in a room and everybody will see one common denominator. They all are connected. They're from the same pool of our community. Let's open it up and involve others who may or may not choose to be with status quo. But let's support them the way we support others. I'll leave you with this. Mr. Bonzel was here in office. We hosted the largest event in our YMCA's history. The largest event. Not one violent act. We brought together the police and the firefighters and had them play basketball with our at-risk youth. Not long after, an officer got a call, firearms involved. He approached the young man and they said, wait a minute, aren't you the guys that Pastor James put us together with to see if this thing will work? Well, let's try it. Let's see if Pastor James is right. The young man said, well, I'm not a snitch. But give me about 10 minutes to come back. Look behind that bush. The officer came back, firearm in the bush, had been disarmed, no harm, no foul. Guys, if we give each other a chance and utilize the resources that you have before you, stop discrediting them because your friends or your family don't like them. Because more than likely they don't like them for some crazy reason. So God bless you all. I am going to be sending that email out. And as I said last time, guys, I've asked and I've asked and I've asked. I haven't brought anybody in Norwood. In fact, on our very first march, we were told we couldn't do it. And I said, well, I'm not going anywhere. Because all I have to do is call it a march. And in fact, you have to now patrol the streets anyway to protect your citizens. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to bring negative to our community. And our event ended up being beautiful, and all of you know it. Not one incident. At the event at the YMCA, James Bonzel remembers, we gave away championship belts to the children who won in video games. But guess what? After that director left, the following years to come, the event that I planned, another pastor was doing it. Another church was doing it. And I get a notice, which I can show you the emails, after everything's already been planned. At my event, mind you. And the only thing they needed done, imagine this, the trash being dumped. Guys, how do you go from planning the most successful membership drive in the history of our community at our local YMCA to now all you can do is dump the trash at your own event? If you don't think there's status quo in Norwood, just come on with me. I'm going to bring some brothers in here to help us out a little bit. Bring some folks in here to really help us address our issues. I love this community. My son Lemuel hopes to be one of the very first African-American police officers in Norwood's history. My daughter, she's being groomed for leadership. She's not going to come under any of you. She's going to create her own. So I pray that we can put some of these committees into a specific committee. I thank God for Mr. Kelch being willing and transparent to listen, even if I act a little crazy sometimes. I mean, heavens. One of our best Olympians just had a mental health spout, and everybody in the world supported her. We got to work together, guys. And it's not always going to look pretty. I truly thank God for this opportunity today. And I want to say to all the African American and minority children listening right now, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And this is a beautiful community full of beautiful people. We just have some issues. But don't give up on yourselves and don't give up on them. And with the help of God and new energy in our community, new energy in leadership from the top down, from the mayor's position down, even in our community groups, we've got to change the head. We got to change the leadership and make it more inclusive. I pray this was well received today. Again, I apologize if there's any African American anywhere on the planet that is frustrated with me tonight or feel that I disgraced our race or our people. And I say that to all of our Norwood residents. If in any way, shape, or form you think I've been an embarrassment, or if I've hurt you in any way, or if I've made any culture feel less than or second rate, from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely apologize, because that is not who I am, and that is not what I stand for. I want all people to be equal. And when we have a hero walking on our streets, they shouldn't be attacked and challenged and misjudged and misread. They need to be supported and lifted up and loved and supported and encouraged. That's all I want to do, guys. So I want to edify people, lift people up. But I want to make sure that people of color know that somebody's out here paving a way. But I need your help. And I'm asking for your help. God bless you all. Mr. Kelch, I want to say publicly, you were there on the street the other day. You saw when the police even came. They were like just babysitters. They didn't engage the drama. Sometimes you got to engage people to make change. So publicly, I'm going to applaud you. I don't know who else in this room would have hopped out of that car with me when you had your own issues going on. That's what it takes. Last time I checked, you're not black. Last time I checked, you've been challenged. I talked to a resident just a few days ago who was upset about another leader using the N-word. And he called me. He said, Pastor, first I want to give you respect. Yes, I've used the N-word. And maybe I shouldn't have. And I know, but I know about you. And if I come real with you, you won't judge me. And you won't hate me. And that gentleman can call me any day of the week. We don't have to be like each other. We just got to be willing to work with each other, guys. So with that, I pray that this 13-point plan resonates with you. There's so many different things in here, but if we're not willing to come together, see what most people in Norwood do, like our movie idea. The black group comes up with a great movie idea, and then all of a sudden another group takes it, and then their very first movie is 42, talking about our black history. Guys, come on, that's nonsense. That's not how we should do it. There are a lot of things in here that have already been implemented or started, but now you know where it came from. Look at the date. It's 2015. So let's work together, guys. When we call this committee together, when we call these residents together, let's just come and support. Let's just be ready to make history together. And I love this city. And I love the changes that we've made. We've got some great groups and great people here. We just got to get on the same page. So again, in closing, I apologize if anybody has been hurt by anything that I've said or implied. That is not my heart. That is not who I am. Sometimes we misunderstand each other. But I'll be the first to say that's not my heart toward any human being. I want everybody to prosper. And if I've said something to hurt anybody, I sincerely apologize. But it's time for change, and change is going to come. Either you participate with the change, or it's going to come anyway. God bless you all. Thank you again for this opportunity. Pray God's speed be upon you. I pray that Mr. Geraci will find it in his heart with his committees and with the committees you all work on to find a place for this, that we can further the discussion, but starting with bringing people together so we can really take a look at it, so people can see what status quo looks like and what systemic looks like. God bless you guys.
Thank you, Mr.
Anything
James.
else?
Mr. Braden?
I'd like to say something, sure, yeah. So, I'll tell you what's BS, Mr. James, okay? I'll tell you exactly what's BS here, okay? This diversion that we're doing here today, that's BS, okay? Try to keep my level here because I don't want to discredit you, Mr. Kelch. I respect you, okay? I don't want to discredit you. But we're in a diversion here today, all right? Ladies and gentlemen, I've heard nothing but this community's racist. We're racist, and as long as you guys sit here and keep your mouth shut, he'll praise you. Okay? So, but the guy who wants to speak up, okay, here's what's BS, okay? Someone said KKK, and you want to relate that to my community. That's BS, okay? Here's what else is BS. Years of you screaming, the last administration, and look, all this is you, me defending my community. Because you don't know me, sir. You don't know me. You don't know what I do in my free time. You don't know who I hang around with. And don't act like you do, because you don't. But yet you come in here and you want to tell me that I'm racist. And I'm about sick of it. Because years you want to come in here. The last administration, racist. This administration, racist. Zero evidence. Zero. Yeah, you come in here and say it. I haven't seen zero evidence. Matter of fact, the last time you had the Department of Justice in here, I saw it. I saw the interview, and the very thing they said, the very last words was zero evidence of discrimination. I saw it. So that's
Absolutely
BS.
false.
And that's all you want to do. Now, all right, now, and like I said, I hope that you understand that I'm defending my community and the people that are in it.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
Yes, sir. So now and I want to stay away from you, sir. I think you know how I feel about you. We're friends, but we have proof now. We have video evidence. I'm on your side. N-word, right? That's what I saw, and you want to come in here and protect that. And now cover that up. I'm on. You want to act like this is now you have real evidence.
Are you awake?
Of racism, but yet we're going to brush over that. But yet everybody else around us is, but except for that, and now that. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to respond to anything. You could go on for. We've heard you for an hour now, sir. You could go on for 3 hours. I'm not going to say one more word because I realize I'm in a losing battle here. But as far as I'm concerned, you've discredited yourself because you have screamed racism with zero evidence. And now you want to brush over the rug real evidence you have videotaped. So that's all for me. Don't act like you know me, sir. Don't act like you know me.
What's the real
Thank you,
evidence?
Mr. President. I appreciate you, sir.
What's the real evidence you're dealing with?
Hold on just
If
a
I
second.
could ask, because I'm unclear.
I can't.
I'm on your side, N-word. That's the evidence right there.
Point of order, I think we need to take a break.
That was on the, that's not me, that's video that you have.
What is he talking about?
What video?
What are you talking about?
We're going to take a 5-minute break.
John, what video are you talking about?
We'll take a 5-minute break.
I'm gonna stay calm. I'm gonna stay calm. I had no
No, that
doubt
would be
this
good.
guy-
That would be good.
Coming back.
Okay, we're back. We're going to move on.
But before we move on,
Mr. Vaughn,
I was going to ask that we kind of not move on because I did want to have a conversation.
well, I'm going to tell you right now, if it gets out of hand, well, I'm shutting it down right now, okay?
That's absolutely fair.
Because
I feel that the reason is that when this meeting was called, this is what we needed, was dialogue. Now, if it does get out of hand, I agree, we shut it down, that's fine. However, the reason we had this was to have dialogue. That's kind of why I would like
we're
to
going to have
continue.
professional dialogue.
Absolutely.
Treat everyone here with respect. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I'm not going to tolerate anything else. Just
Absolutely.
putting that out there right now. I'll shut the meeting down and we're all going to go home. This is totally unnecessary. That we can't sit down here and have a civil conversation with each other. Mr. Geraci. Mr. Bonds. Someone.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you're good. Thank you, Mr. President. So, I mean, I just kind of, we have the agenda item is racial equality. I mean, we have been here now, I guess it was 50 minutes that we heard from Mr. James. What's the goal? Just what are the action items, just so that we can figure out what we're doing? I mean, where are we going from here?
What I think, and what I talked to Pastor James about, is possibly getting a topic, and I wrote some notes here, in Mr. Tracy's Committee of Law and Ordinances. The discussion of, is it a committee of us, or is it a subcommittee or a board on racial equality, inclusion, and discuss like how that board's formed, what are we looking at from that board? That's a discussion for there. But I would like Mr. Tracy to talk about this in his Law and Ordinance Committee on the creation of this board or committee or wherever it kind of evolves to.
So you're
Kind of like adding a new committee.
Yeah, like just discussing, like, do we see fit to add a new committee for council members, or is this a board that we appoint residents to that are non-elected officials?
I don't think we need to do another committee a lot of us are all bogged down with the committees we
Yeah.
have. We can add this into a committee at some point and discuss it. But again, like tonight, while we've sat here and we've listened to several members say, well, we've been here for 50 minutes and haven't really resolved anything. I agree to a point, but I disagree to another point. I think that we should be involved in a conversation, not having just people talk and talk and talk. Because when somebody talks and then another person talks, it has to be a back and forth to have a good conversation. Otherwise, you don't have a conversation, you just have talking, right?
Yeah.
So if we leave it as a committee of the whole and we discuss it during committee of the whole, that's where I think we should be involved. We shouldn't have just 2, 3, 4 members involved from council. We need to have us all. So I think this is something that we need to start doing with committee of the whole and having small segmented discussions.
Well, I definitely support the idea of having a board created for these topics, racial equality, inclusion, board made up of residents that are not elected officials that, we can appoint or the administration can appoint, and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Bonson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, I think that's fine if you all, if you want to work on figuring out kind of what that committee would do or what that board would do, figuring out kind of the makeup. We do have experience now creating these since we've created a few of them. So, I think that's fine. I'd also say, we talked about it was a year ago, we had this discussion about a diversity committee. There were 4 council members that wanted to be on it. There were 2 that did not want to be on it. I don't remember where the 7th one was, but I would say get volunteers of council. If you want to really continue and have Mr. James back every month, go ahead and just get those people together, and that way you all can work on action items and then bring it to the full council, things like that. That's totally fine. That specific action item you're talking about the board. If you figure out what you want to do with it, I have no issue with that whatsoever. I just want to make sure that we're just making best use of everybody's time. Just so that, when we're all together, we can just start, like I said, getting action items, getting things done, knocking things out. That's what I'm concerned about, because I want to see, if we're going to have the conversation, I want to see something effective come out of it. I just don't want it, I don't want it to leave here and it's oh, okay, we didn't do anything other than, we listened. So that's just my thing. So however this goes, but I do think that potentially that diversity committee, maybe you all might want to start that back up and figure out who wants to kind of be on that and put them on it. Be fine.
Mr. Kelch, I'm sorry, could you repeat the air conditioning was kind of drowning out a little bit what you're saying? Just for my report, when I report this out, what did you say? Could you repeat that for me again?
Yes, I support an idea of, going to Matt's Law and Ordinance Committee, discuss the creation of a Racial Equality and Inclusion Board or Diversity Board or whatever we decide to call it, and just kind of discuss what the board's going to do, who's going to be on that board, and all that. Matt went, I guess, and said maybe we should discuss that here. So, but I just wanted to say I support the creation of this board and any discussion therein.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
Well, the last thing, should we open it up to any of the other people in the audience, potentially to see if anybody else has anything they want to add, before we close the topic, of course?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to close the topic yet.
Okay, for sure. I just want to make sure we give the opportunity to anybody else.
Mrs. Stevenson?
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Do you want to grab this phone? Good evening. When I saw the agenda item, I wanted to make sure I passed along an invitation. You have at your desk a flyer. Story Quilts 2021. It's a global movement to face racism and heal together. This is an organized event that's happening across the nation. If you scan the QR code or if you go online to storyquilts2021.com, you can find other sites, but I'm happy to share there are actually 2 of these conversations unfolding in Norwood. You actually have the invite to the one taking place in partnership with Xavier. I'm not a part of creating this, but I do plan to go to one, and if you're interested in continuing the dialogue with residents or neighbors or people who live maybe adjacent to Norwood, I just want to make sure you knew about this and had the opportunity to take advantage of that. The invitation you have is for September 7th. It's from 5:30 to 7:30, and this is facilitated. The organization that is facilitating it has been around for almost 30 years. There are people who are professionals in having this type of conversations who will be on site. So you just have to show up and be willing to talk with the other people who are present. That's what I wanted to share.
Is that a Tuesday evening?
I believe it is, the first Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Two folks back there? No? Mr. Thompson?
Thank you. I just my 2 cents on how to handle committee-wise. I think if we want to create a council committee, it should probably go to Law and Order just to have it done. I'm more inclined, I support a council committee. I also want to say I support sort of a community committee, non-elected members. Basically, just to be perfectly honest, I don't see what a whole lot of good 4 white guys sitting around talking about racial equality will do. We've got our own biases and our own lack of knowledge on that, and I think it would help more if it's a much more inclusive group. Now, if we wanted to have a committee that was kind of a liaison or something between 2, I think that would make sense, but I'm personally more in line with a community kind of, really want it to be like a broad kind of, I want educators and residents and people of color and not just black minority, but other minorities from the community. And I think there's an opportunity for a bigger picture discussion to happen there. And I don't think it needs necessarily to happen as a council, though I do want to be kind of like part of it. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Nice job.
Any other, Mr. Tracy?
All right. So I believe there's 3 rookies here that were elected. Myself, DiNardo, and Mr. Kelch. The rest have all been on council prior. You brought this up in 2015, this list. Have you seen anything on this list that has been talked about, discussed? attempted to work on.
Let me share. Thank you. If I can first, because you got to give honor to whom honor is due. And I don't know if it's because he's come to our hearing every perspectives, where we gather multiracial individuals. But I do want to say you're spot on, because that's really the key. But I don't mind having the city's involvement. I think actually that gives us more strength and more stability when we can show that we actually are together. So one of the things that, if you look at it when we talk about town hall meetings, I remember speaking to, and since that individual isn't here today, I won't mention his name, but I remember meeting with him and another gentleman about some community matters. And I said to him, and he's the only person I told, and I told him that specifically because I wanted to see if it would come back. And so all of a sudden, in Ward 1, we began having these community or resident meetings. Well, I applaud that, because if you notice, if you read here, it's on there. So to answer your question, yes, but they kind of took it out of context. And I'm not laughing because it's funny, Mr. Thompson. I'm laughing because it's hilarious that we all can look, and anybody watching, they can see you're spot on. Some things you cannot just have somebody else run it because the city works that way. Black issues should be presented by black people. And when you don't do that, it makes it a little bit more disingenuous. Again, let me say for the record, I don't have any problems putting it with a committee. But at the same time, this is, and if you go over the list, Ola Atia is not a black woman. Okay? Julie and Fred, they're not black. This, Lemuel James, he brings youth, but most of you know, he brings youth from a legal-minded perspective. Even though he's my son, we all know.
Can we kind of try to stay on?
So that's one area.
So the community, what do you got, town hall meetings?
Yes.
So while they aren't the way I think you envision them, we do have those meetings. We do have ward meetings. You just have to get in touch with those people. While they might be involved with another organization, and then they're there, okay? We have to work with them. Again, you've preached all the groups should be able to work together and facilitate things together, not separately, correct? So, like, if we have 4 organizations in Norwood, 4 nonprofits, we want all those nonprofits working together.
Yes.
We don't want 4 separate individual nonprofits working all separate items and then ending up coming back with possibly the same idea and everybody trying to bum rush for the same idea. We want these community groups to work together as one entity, but still keep their individualism, right? So while it may not have come up in the way that you perceived it to be, we have them, okay? So we've got that checked off the list because we do have these ward community meetings. And I'm sure that if you brought topics to the certain wards that you wanted to bring up during these meetings, they would be willing to allow that. If not, then we look to figure out why. Now, those meetings aren't controlled by council because we have certain sunshine laws and things that we have to abide by. So those aren't controlled by council. Those aren't, we don't host them as council members. But again, this is where we have to, as a community, step up with these nonprofits and have everybody working together, not separately. So we can check the town hall meetings off. The other one I see is the diversion options, which is what we're trying to work on with the
Yeah.
with the law department. That's something that myself, Chris, can't do. It's something they have to do on the legal side. So, I mean, we can't control the law department one way or the other, you know. It's an elected position, just like us. We can put the pressure on them, but we can't, like, force them to move faster or force them to move in a direction. I'm sure you kind of saw that last night when, at the meeting. I don't know if you watched that meeting or not, but kind of saw that last night. Go ahead.
Yeah, but in all due respect, you know, I've attended some of these community group meetings, and I myself have had to either excuse myself because I don't like the tone, I don't like when they target a certain individual or what have you. That's not the group I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that just honestly just want the best for everybody, no matter what race they are, no matter what age they are, no matter where they came from, no matter their financial, economic status. And some of our existing groups, again, to answer Mr. Bonzo, first two plans of action, I want to make sure they're clear, okay? And Mr. Geraci did a good job mentioning it. You got to come to the table. That's what's been missing so far. If you don't believe me, when have you come? Right? You got to come to the table. But when you come to the table, ownership should remain in the hands of the invested parties that truly have come together with the sole purpose of saying, separate from race, separate from finances, separate from anything, we just want our community to be fair and equal, and we're not already connected to what looks like status quo. And the only way we're going to see status quo, the only way that all of us are going to see what systemic looks like, if you bring all of our powers to be, heavens, let's have a picnic. Okay? Bring them all together. And when you line them up, I've got a professional family tree guy, and he can do a Norwood tree for us. And I guarantee you're going to see what systemic looks like. So it'll be for everyone to see. So it won't be any question like, what is he arguing about? What is he talking about? He's always talking this, he's always talking that. Why is it in 2021 that all of our employees, all of our committees, they're all related? You mean we don't have any quality black people? I'm not saying Chris is racist. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, let's set up committees. We can call them panels. We don't have to go through a legal term. Because this stuff I've already done separate from the city of Norwood. So I didn't need any legal team to support it, endorse it, or whatever. And when the people flood our city, I don't think they're meeting with the mayor saying, hey, I want to come bombard your city next Friday night at 6 o'clock. What I'm trying to do is prevent our city from being looked upon any further in a negative way. And if we bring residents together, Matt, that have one accord, not necessarily under the auspice of the existing groups, because I've been there when even you have been the subject and target.
Absolutely.
I can't operate
However,
with that.
hang on. Let me.
Okay. I just want to
real quick,
clarify.
because again, we're trying to have a discussion, not
Yes,
get
sir.
lectured, okay? And I don't want to sit here and I don't, you know,
I understand.
we don't want to be lectured. We want to ask questions, answer questions. Just like when you ask us questions, you want us to answer and not beat around the bush and get a lecture and things like that, right?
Okay,
So
that's
the
fair.
questions that I'm asking are basically, when I look at this, I see 1, 2, 3, at least 3 of these we can check off.
Would you mind pointing those out?
So
Just so I
the,
can,
the town hall meetings, okay? Now, I don't know what goes on when you go to a town hall, because I've been to some of them. I haven't seen you at them. I mean, I'm sure if you get a hold of the coordinator and you want to put something on the town hall, have you tried? Have you tried?
Are you
I
asking?
understand. I understand where they're coming from. I get that, okay? They come from another nonprofit. I understand that. Have
No.
you contacted the coordinators for those board meetings?
let me go even further, sir. I can show you, I used to be an avid part of our community coalition. Every meeting, faithful. But after making numerous attempts to get our project agendas on the agenda item, and it was never done. But all of their partners would always be printed, and I have these saved.
Okay,
if you'd
but
like to
is
look
that
at
this council?
it. No, but
Is
I
that
thought we
this-
were talking about in reference to,
I don't think I mean, so Norwood Together is the group that runs the ward meetings. I mean, I don't
no,
think.
I can't, I'm
So
sorry.
I'm pretty sure it's Norwood Together that that group originally started these ward community meetings that Mr. Tracy's talking about. Is that the group that runs the community coalition, or is there another group that runs the community?
Well, to be honest, in all fairness, I stopped attending because
Yeah,
I saw
I
status
know that
quo
their
forward.
issue, I do know that it's very hard to get on those agendas because they have 1 hour a month and they've got all these different partners and they're trying to achieve action items. Again, we've been here now an hour and 20 minutes. And so they've got a ton of different organizations that are there. So I mean, it's very hard to get on their agenda because it's just, they're very action oriented. They want you to come to them with exactly what you need, boom, boom, boom. So I hear you, but the ward ones, I do suggest, I think Mr. Tracy is really on a good point here. I mean, I do think that really suggest reaching out to, either Mary C. Miller. If you don't feel comfortable with Mary C. Miller, I can get you the list of the 4 different people that coordinate the ward things and get onto one of those agendas and kind of, talk about, some of the stuff that you want to do. Because I think that's really it's where we start building.
And see, that's why I asked the question, if you have gotten a hold of any of these 4 people that run these meetings, to maybe talk about something, to try and bring something up for just that meeting, right? Just that monthly meeting or whatever it may be, what agenda item you want to bring up for that ward. Or if it's, Cheezel Pete's, specific to Ward 1, specific to Ward 4. We have, while that vision wasn't done under what you expected, I think, you have to take advantage of what's there, right? Take advantage of it. It's there. It's out, I don't know how many people attend the ward meetings, to be honest. It may be up, it may be down, but take advantage of what's there. Utilize the resource that is there. And again, that can be checked off the list. Transparency and accountability. I know at least you and I have talked about this between myself and Kelch, where that's what we preach almost every meeting, every Facebook, is transparency and being accountable for what happens around the city. And I think that at least 2 of us have touted that this entire time. So that checks off, as well as the diversion. So there's the 3 that check off, because we're working on that diversion stuff. That's on the law department right now,
Yeah, no, that.
for them to
very
look
good.
into it.
Yeah.
The town halls, we can't control those because of public meeting parameters. That has to be controlled by community. Those are out there now. Those have been out there for 1.5 years, I think. And transparency, there's several of us that have touted the transparency as far as getting it out and being accountable for what happens.
And then number 11, Mr. Tracy, too. So that's happening right now. The citywide, the Clergy Prayer Network. So there is a group, and I mean, I'd be happy to connect Mr. James to that group. But there is a group that's meeting now. I know specifically Zion, the Valley Church, and Josh Stockton, that those 3 are meeting. So I think there's probably more churches that are there, but potentially, yeah, and I just don't know. I mean, that's the problem, is I just don't know. So I would say that we should really get connected to that. And if there's clergy that aren't involved in that right now, we should really make sure that, I can talk to Mr. Stockton, but we need to make sure that everybody's invited, because it's going to take everybody to
I'd
go.
also point out that when it comes to reinvesting in our youth, we've got the baseball fields happening, we've got the basketball courts that have been redone. We've just gotten a new rec center that's being
Yep.
done. I mean,
Yep.
these are all major
Park.
attempts at reinvesting in our
Hunter
youth.
Park's being remodeled.
Good point. Good point.
So if we want to
We can
check
mark
that
I
off
think we can
then.
check that.
Well,
I mean, some of these things you
I mean,
continual.
we look
Yeah.
at, and it's something that can't be done all at once, but it's something that continues to be worked on and pushed through without you realizing that it's being done. That's where I'm trying to get to the point of, you have to look at this and really open up the vision and see what of these have really been done. Number 9, as far as emphasis on after-school programs, that's something to work on with the Board of Education, not us. I mean, we don't control after-school, we don't control the schools. That's something to work on with the Board of Education. That's something to bring to them and say, hey, look, is there something that we can work on where my nonprofit group helps you guys out? What can we do to work together between my group and the school? That's something for them, because we don't work for the school. We can't go to them and say, hey, you guys need to do this.
Yeah, so I think we can actually check off, so far we checked off 4, 7, 8, because we've got elevations for number 8, and then also these schools, they've got a program, Mr. Kelch might know more, but they've got a program for teen enrichment, teen involvement, where the teens they encourage each other to make better choices, and they do fun activities. I think that's Glenna's the one that runs that. But I mean, that youth community forum, they're really working that right now. I mean, I've been to multiple events that they put on that where you can hear from the youth directly. So I mean, number 8 potentially we could check off. So that's 4, 7, 8. We refer number 9 to the Board of Education. And then you've got 10, 11, 12, and I think because Mr. Tracy talked about the transparency, so you got 12 you check off. And then, in my opinion, 13 gets checked off too, where it says our city declares a state of emergency, because we probably had 2.5 to 3 hours worth of meetings, maybe 2.5, on this topic. I mean, I feel like we've really, that's giving this a high priority. So, the things that potentially need to get worked on then are inclusion amongst our leadership, which there are people running for office that might be more representative of the community than the 7 people that are currently on council. Number 2 is that more community presence and effective relationship building strategies. I'll commit to you right now, Mr. James, I will try to make it to your next event so that, we can kind of have that community presence, and I can kind of be there and be there with you. So I won't check it off until we go, but, and then the surveillance cameras, I think that's really more, number 3 is surveillance cameras. I think we really need to just have a discussion on that, about whether, is that still the right move? Is it not? I mean, you came up with this in 2015, and I applaud you that this has stayed, a solid plan, but maybe you might want to change that to something else, or you might still be committed to it. I don't want to speak for you, but I just do want to applaud Mr. Dracy right now, frankly, because I do think it's great to point out, what is going on. So I do appreciate that, and that way we can focus on the things that we need to work on.
And I don't mean by pointing these out that you're not paying attention to anything. What I mean by pointing them out is to show the fact that we're listening. Okay? Without even actually looking this up, I think a couple of us actually did this not even thinking about it, and honestly just kind of running right into it, to be honest, just by listening to you. I mean, just word of mouth between myself and you, and probably yourself and Mr. Kelch. I spoke with you before the last election, and my entire campaign that last time was transparency, transparency, transparency. Yeah. And again, I didn't see this before that last election because I wasn't any part of any politics prior to that. But that was, I did speak with you before, prior to the other election, or the last election, and that's what came out, was part of my campaign was transparency. It's still part of my campaign is transparency, because I feel that we have to be able to show the community what we can do. And, I don't think I even realized what we've actually done off this list until tonight, to be honest. Because like you, I guess I wasn't really focused on what was going on until I actually looked at this list and started thinking while you were talking about what we have accomplished since being here. And I think we've accomplished a lot. You and I spoke the other night, and as I said, police, fire, public works, they all have civil service testing that has to be done. That's a fair assessment for anybody that comes in here. I know friends that have come in here who are police officers that literally got offered a better offer from their current job. And some of them have come here baiting their old job to get better money or better benefits, better hours. Literally have just come to Norwood to test and say, well, I'm number 2 on the list. What are you going to do for me to keep me? So, I can't say that that's everybody, but I know of 6 people that I've talked to that are African American who literally said to me, I came and took Norwood's test to bait my other job. And I don't blame them. They wanted better pay. They wanted better hours. They got it. So, and I can tell you, one of my absolute best friends that literally every time we talk to each other, he and I both say, what's going on, brother? Because he is a brother from another mother, because he actually lived in my house for, I think it was almost 3 years during his high school career. Went to school with my brother, went to school with Mr. Kelch, and we took him in, and he lived with us 3 years through high school. And him and I are as close to blood brothers as you can get. Dom Steele. And I'm sure he's as close to Chris as anybody as well. But again, like I said, we brought Dom in during some hard times, and he lived with us, I think, 3 years. So, and when he came out of MMA, he had to think of what to do. He went down and tested for Public Works, and has been on Public Works. And I literally, when I saw him cutting a tree down on my house, first thing I did was walk straight up to him like, oh my gosh, really? I never thought I'd see him there. But he busts his butt, he works hard, and that's what we have to look at as far as employment in the city, because the city jobs are all run by civil service, all run by rules, regulations, things like that. We have to have people willing to take the job if offered. That's what we have to look for. So I'm not trying to downplay anything that we're talking. I'm trying to give a perspective from looking on the outside, okay? I absolutely do want community engagement. I don't want to see lectures. That's what I don't want to see. I want to see the back and forth. We don't get anything done lecturing each other, as you and I found out. We get heated. We get things done by asking questions, communicating, talking. That's how we get things done. That's how we get things moving in the right direction, right?
That is a way.
I can possibly get hurt over something you say. You can possibly get hurt over something I say.
One second. Addressing the president again.
You have to speak up, but I can't.
Yeah, addressing the president of council again, with all due respect, we're having dialogue as we instructed, but then we still have the negative going on. All I'm asking is that we all remain professional, no matter what we like or don't like. And it's difficult for me to maintain my sanity when I'm present and I agree to the rules, but then there's no accountability or consequences when that's violated. And leading to the point, some of these things have been addressed. But when you talk about transparency and accountability, the argument that I'm making, sir, is different than the argument or the facts that you're presenting.
Okay,
You
so
yourself.
Explain what transparency and accountability you're looking for, because when we have a one-line list, it gives us no context. All we have is one-liner. So,
Okay. So I'll use a reality that we see in this council chambers. The administration can put you all to a task. And the same task that they give you, they still have the right to pull it back at any given moment, and even leave you as elected city officials bewildered saying, what just happened? It's easy to say we're addressing some of these, like Mr. Bonzo said, number 8, a youth community forum, and he mentioned elevations. But if we say elevations, how is it then, if elevations is respected in that way, how is it that when elevations introduces an awesome idea like movies, everyone knows that was presented by elevations? But like what you're saying, that we all work together and then don't try to reinvent the project, by the same token, we see that the black ran organization is ran over, and the idea and the project is incorporated into someone else's vision. How then is it that we're supposed to, and with all due respect, I'm just going off of what Mr. Geraci mentioned, how we don't want to reinvent the wheel, we all want to work together. So when you have an organization that already is engaged to do something, my encouragement to avoid status quo is that the other respected or recognized groups then don't take the idea without so much as one conversation. In fact, when I spoke to the mayor at the end of council, he asked me to give our idea to my, at that time, 19-year-old son. His words were, why don't you give the project to Lemuel and let Lemuel take it and work with the police? And I looked at our mayor and I said, are you crazy? You mean you don't want the black woman to get the credit for the program she's put together unless we give it away and they agree to work with who you say they work under? That is systemic and status quo. That's why, sir, it's difficult for me to say work with that group or work with this group, because it's played with status quo. We need something fresh.
Mr. Bonds?
Thank you.
I just want to correct the record on the specific one.
I'm having a hard time.
No, I just want to correct the record on the, I mean, you did bring up the movie at a drive-in movie thing at Waterworks Park, right? But, I mean, what other, it's not going to be on council to then take that, to take that idea and then go and execute it. I mean, you've got to then come forward and you've got to apply for the permits. You've got to work and get the funding that you need to get the licenses for the TV. That's what these other groups have done in the past that have hosted movie nights. And the police department has done movie nights at Waterworks Park before, and it's accomplished that. But it's not council. The police didn't come to council and say, council, I have this idea, and then council take it and then somehow go and put the event on. I mean, it's whoever's, if Elevations wants to do an event, Elevations has to keep driving it forward. And I'm not saying that they're not, I'm just saying that the city, I mean, the city should be, if they've made gotten the licenses, if they've gotten the permits, they've gotten everything else, I don't see why the event didn't happen, because that's kind of where I'm at. It seems like anytime somebody else does something that you might have suggested at some point in the past, you're getting aggravated that they stole your idea. But essentially, they just, one, they probably didn't know about your idea, and then two, they actually executed on it. So I think we've just really continually putting down other organizations that are getting it done. It's counterproductive. Now, if there's an issue with you don't have basically you need instructions on what to do, on maybe the city needs to be more clear on the permitting process, that's different. I mean, maybe we can work on that to make sure that's more, it's not just tribal knowledge, that it's really laid out in writing. But I mean, I guess you can't, I mean, you came to us last year, I think it was, about this idea, but I don't have any expertise in this. I have no idea how to put that on, and I mean, frankly, I'm not going to. It's not kind of it's not in my wheelhouse. It's not my purview. I don't know how to do that. So I just want to be clear that the organizations that have done that, they've done it on their own, they haven't had council's real help in doing it.
Can I interject here real quick? we're about an hour and 40 minutes into this. Mr. Kelch, can you just hit reset here, and where are we going forward? What's the action plan for council?
The plan that I believe we have is what we talked about of discussing, putting a board together of residents to sit on this board and kind of talk about these things. What can we do to improve the city and racial equality, and go from there.
And just to be clear, we're not putting it in law and ordinance committee, we're going to keep it in committee of the whole?
Yes.
Okay, so then we can,
So that's the one. And then if there's any items, so I think we're just down to like inclusion amongst our leadership. I mean, that's going to be hard I think the voters are going to have to really work on that. The second one, more community presence. I mean, I committed to coming to more events. I'll try to be at them. So I have not made much effort in the past, at least in the past 6 months, but I'll try to make more effort going forward. And then I think really 5 and 6 are the two on the plan. Number 3, I'm willing to give you a do-over unless you want to recommit to it. That's fine if you want to commit. But 5 and 6 seem to be the ones that are the ones to do. I don't know where council fits in on non-traditional mentors assigned to at-risk youth and programs and resources for parents of at-risk youth. But I mean, if there's ideas that people have,
That's why I was getting to those two to see
go
if,
ahead, yeah.
again, more context, because I've got to figure out what, as a city, that we could do under the parameters that we have, or that we have to work under, if that makes sense.
So what are those parameters?
Because
that's the
to
issue
me-
that I have.
To me, it's, and I'm going to go back to the same thing I said with the tobacco ordinance that we just passed. A lot of that starts at home. No matter what race you are, it all starts at home. So do we look at the families and figure out how to, everything starts when you're yay big, right? No matter what it is, whether it's sports, whether it's school, whether it's crime, whether it's politics, everything starts when you're itty bitty, right? So we have to look at how, and I'm not sure that we as a council can bring families into a group and say, what is it that is causing you to teach certain aspects, okay? From one side, from the other side, from straight ahead, from behind us. That's something, those two things there, from the parameters of a council, what do we do?
If I could jump in there. To me, I think this, and I don't want to speak for you, Pastor Sonny, but this gets into a lot of the systemic things that we have going on in our society, and it does come down to family in a lot of instances, but a lot of times at-risk youth are at risk because of socioeconomic status, because of the street that they're on. I mean, there's just a lot of things that can make people or young people at risk, and a lot for those parents. Sometimes the parents don't know, how to deal with that. Again, I don't know that it's an immediate council solve. To me, like, these kind of things cry out for good social programs. Social programs typically require good funding, which is something that the city doesn't always have at our fingertips, which is why we kind of rely on organizations like your own to help fill these gaps. And so I know where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from on these, and I think it's slightly different than it's just home life is messed up. But although that's a part of it, I'm sure. Some of these things, when it comes to systemic issues and things like that, I would encourage, like all of us, seek out history of the culture that we're not a part of. And I would encourage you to reach out to the schools to actually try to get some accurate history taught. I was in my 40s before I knew what Juneteenth was. Why is that? I didn't know about the Tulsa race riots until 4 years ago. I've got a college degree. I'm a progressive liberal person, and I did not know.
I can tell you I knew about all those when I was,
Yeah, great, good for you. I grew up in the middle of Kentucky where they didn't teach you those things.
And I wanna
So,
say
so it's
thank
like, I think starting to teach some of the realities of things that we didn't know. The sundown cities were around when I was alive, and probably still are in some places. These kind of things that people aren't exposed to, don't understand, and that bleed into systemic racism. The fact that our entire prison system is built on Southern desire to put black people back to work in the fields for nothing. It's like, this is just kind of realities of the way that our country was built. It's not always pleasant, but as people start to realize that and start to understand some of the things that the black community is up against, just from an oppressive weight of society being built the way it has been for the last several hundred years.
Thank you.
Some of these things can start to be addressed. But a lot of that is education and outreach. And that's, we're trying to solve incredibly huge problems.
Mr. Mayor.
And number one,
Can I say something?
inclusion amongst our leadership. That's where it really is.
Mr.
Well,
Brady?
oh, thank you, appreciate
Mr. Brady.
that, thank you. So, yeah, I mean, as someone who has worked with the youth, all youth in this community for 30-plus years, and I'm looking at you, sir, and you probably have got more than that in that, this isn't going to be accomplished tonight. We've been on this for a couple hours. I would ask that we move on.
well, it's not going to be accomplished. However, we're having.
We're not going to accomplish it tonight. I've been teaching racial equality for 30-plus years in this community, and I know you have too, sir. And it's not going to be fixed
Well-
tonight. And we can continue this conversation, and I'm totally with it, and I think it's 100% correct, but after 2 hours, we can move on.
And I understand you, Mr. Braden, however, and I've been.
30 years.
I've been up since about 4:30 this morning. I have gone nonstop. I've been home twice.
Some of us got
so-
families waiting on us.
Oh,
it's
I'm
time-
sorry. I don't have a family waiting on me?
That's
I didn't
it.
say you didn't.
Hold on, time out.
Mr. President?
Gentlemen,
Way to end it, Mr. Braden. Way to end it.
gentlemen, Pastor James, please. Anything else? Is there anything else from council?
The only last thing that I have, real quick.
No, with all due respect, I listened to your orders, and to what I understand, I've so far respected that order, sir. My issue is when other peers don't follow suit and there's no accountability. I did not make anyone, I'm not here to offend anyone's family. I'm not here, don't put my family and all of that in, and then not come back and just say, hey, I shouldn't have said that, I'm sorry. And then from leadership, we don't address these things?
What are you talking about?
The comment that was just made, we all have been up all day. I was just hit by a car
What do
yesterday.
you want him to do, Mr. James?
No.
Gentlemen,
You're addressing
I'm not-
me, sir.
I'm not arguing, no.
You're
I'm
addressing me.
gonna
What do
follow.
you want him to do?
I'm going to,
After 2 hours, enough.
Mr. Brady.
Enough.
but after 100
What
years
is that? Is that,
of people being not heard and treated bad, 2 hours is certainly a
it's
small.
never going to end.
Excuse me, sir, it
Mr.
is
Brady,
going to
please.
end, and it's going to end now.
It's
And
not.
this
It's
is-
never going to end.
Gentlemen, please,
I mean, if you don't know that by now,
Mr. Brady.
Oh, Norwood is.
I'm sorry, sir.
It's going to end, sir, with all due respect, because if it doesn't end, my 9-year-old daughter will never have an
Let's call
opportunity.
this.
And again,
Mr. Brady,
this
please.
is how we roll in Norwood, right? This is who we are, right? And you wonder, so here's what I'm going to do for council. And maybe I will ask my dear peer to stand with us, if he would be so bold to. There are people that are willing to come to Norwood to really help us to address this on a professional level. And I have, for a long time, kept others out. I have kept many people from filing lawsuits to further hurt our city. But guys, enough's enough. And all I'm trying to do here, in response to Mr. Bonzo, on one end I'm told, well, bring your ideas to the city. Then I'm told, well, have you talked to so-and-so about it? And then when you do go and talk to the city, or when you do and go talk to so-and-so about it, the whole modem of apparatus is, oh, that's a great thing that we can do. It is not, that is a great idea. Why don't you all do it? My attorney, Mr. Eric King, is more financially suited to do whatever he wants to do with any city at any drop of a hat. And he sits on our board. Having the finances is never an issue for us. I was only following what has been asked of me to do, but then when I do that thing, I get from one of our longest standing city councilmen who says, well, I don't know why it didn't happen. It didn't happen, sir, because of the issues that I'm trying to present of how we as a community operate. We had the funding. We had all of the resources. I was told to go to Public Works, talk about the lighting. I was told to go here and do all of this, while behind the scene, they just said, let's just do it. They never once came and said, and Mr. Geraci, I was hoping you would have chimed in because you mentioned it at City Council and said, how is it that Elevations mentioned the wonderful idea of movies and then Mr. Mayor, you guys go and do it? And so all I'm saying is I'm trying to follow the rules that are presented, but it just seems like every time you do one thing, the rules kind of shift and nobody informs you that the rules have shifted. So how do we get involved? How do we? And then when we do say, let's do it, it's always go and operate under them. And I don't mean them meaning white people. I'm talking about just status quo. In other words, if someone comes to Norwood, you're going to hear this. Great idea. Have you talked to Pastor so-and-so? Hey, great idea. Have you talked to so-and-so? Hey, that's a great idea. Have you talked to so-and-so? And I always say, no. Have they talked to me? Would they even want to talk to me? So, in all fairness and out of respect, this was a beautiful start. Because here's the thing. We've got to talk. We got to get together. We got to have these little pockets. And I want to leave you all with this. If anything that I have said tonight has offended any human being on the planet, regardless of race, I am the first to say I apologize. That is not my intention. What I want to do is eliminate status quo, because if we could call an all-city town hall meeting and group all of our committees together, you're going to see that's the first problem. They're not going to come to the meeting. Now that I've said it publicly, they're not going to come, because then you're going to see what I'm talking about. So then the second thing is, whether the city endorses it or not, I don't have to come to the city and ask to meet and work on issues. Just look at the country. They don't have to come and get your approval. Okay? They can just come. I can just come. What I'm trying to do is say, following advice that was given to me years ago by Pastor Nestor Stroud. He said to me, son, oh, it's thick here. It's thick. But if you go away, it's just going to keep on going on. I'm not going away, but I want to work together. I'm not saying that this issue has got to come under the city. I'm not saying that either. But why not work together? Why not make the whole world see that we can argue one night and and elevate our children the next. That's what the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King died on. And some of those brothers that walked with him, you wouldn't have too many people without the administration's support standing up to them, flapping their jaws.
So,
This is not about hurting us. Two things I'm desiring. These two things are going to happen with or without anybody's support in this room. I'd like to get us together and open up opportunities for more people to be engaged in matters that affect the city. The first way to do that is just to call a meeting and invite everybody. Children, adults, seniors. That's the first step. So, Mr. Bonzo, strategy. That's the first step. Step number 2, the city just be okay to say, Pastor James is going to meet with a whole lot of people. And if we can work it in with the city, I'm okay with that. But not one time did I ask any of you, can I do hearing every perspective? Not one time did I ask you to do it. I'm not asking now. All I'm saying is, why do it separate? But we cannot and we will not do it under the same status quo that you yourself are bound and restricted by. That's the only challenge that I'm facing, Mr. DeGracy.
I did mention the fact that why we were doing the movies at the park after something you had brought up. I absolutely 100% did. We as council members cannot be a part of or involved with nonprofits directly, if that makes sense. We can't, legally, we can't do that.
But if I've
I
got
don't
to
think
get
that's
the
true.
lights done with the city's approval, I got to go to the city.
Correct. And that's, but here's the thing. We don't control the mayor. Okay? The mayor doesn't control us, right? I mean, he pulls some strings and rugs out from under us sometimes, but we don't control the mayor and what he does. All we can do is give you the tools to make things happen for you to make that happen. If it's, and I hate the fact that the other nonprofit did utilize those tools and get it done a lot quicker. But I'm pretty certain that you were told the same exact thing as they were.
I wasn't told anything, sir.
Okay, so I don't know how your relationship with the mayor is. We, as a council, can give you the tools and tell you how to do it or how to do something, but we cannot go to these departments and say, you have to give this permit. You have to give them you see where I'm coming from? We can't force that on these departments.
But if another group was given a permit.
That's not on us, though. We don't control those permits.
No, and I
But
apologize
but
if it appears that way.
it-
That's not what I'm saying.
that's how it's coming
And
out.
so
is-
let me apologize. That is not what I mean, and I want everybody to hear that. What I'm saying, though, is if I'm coming to you saying, hey, we want this idea, and someone tells me, even if it is the mayor, hey, why don't you go talk to so-and-so? And then I follow that lead, and that lead leads me back to the same person, and then the same person doesn't answer calls, doesn't return emails, doesn't offer any help, and weeks later, they go to another nonprofit. That nonprofit was never, Norwood Together, was never planning to do movies when they did it.
Right, but what I'm saying
So
is.
someone
you
had to
went-
go to them, and then their collective body had to say, okay, without any of them saying, wait a minute, we already have a group that already mentioned this. Shouldn't we be working with them?
So specifically, okay, so can I just quickly, just want to jump in. So on that specific one, I mean, Norwood Together, and I have been told the story after the fact of exactly what happened with the movies. They were approached by the Norwood Recreation Department, and you can get upset about that, but I'm just
No,
telling
no,
you,
I'm
I'm
saying
just telling you, I'm
yes.
just saying that they were approached by the Norwood, okay, like, hey, can you help with this? Norwood Together wrote a grant and got a grant for $3,000, $1,000 per movie night because those licenses are really expensive to show the movies.
Yes.
So they got the grant, and that's why they partnered. Now, in the future, I'm gonna I'll talk to Phil myself to see if he's open to willingly to reach out to Elevations next time to see how they could partner in that same way. But I don't want it to look like from you, though, that the city is putting on an event but asking Elevations for money, because that's kind of exactly what happened with the Norwood Together. I mean, it was a Norwood recreation event, but the recreation department asked Norwood Together to help find some money for it, and they did. And so I feel like that might be rude to come to you to come to Elevations in that same way. And then the other part about just the events in general, I do think we need to make it very clear how people can apply for permits to have events at city properties. And I don't think it is very clear right now. So what I would just task you is, I'm going to work on getting the form, I'll email it to you. And then when you do want to hold events like that, like, put all of the details on the form that you need. Like, if you need the lights turned off early at Waterworks or the Waterworks part, if you need all the different things that you're going to need to make this event a success, do you need extra trash cans, do you need extra recycling bins, whatever it is, just put that all on this permit. And you shouldn't have to be the one to go and chase this down from, all these different people. That's not, you should be able to apply for the permit, put exactly what you need from the city, let the city then go chase it down, and then see, like, can they do it or can we not, or negotiate with you on what we could or could not do. I think that this whole pointing you here and sending you there, I mean, I agree with you that that's not best practice. And so I think that we're going to need to figure out exactly, again, this permit process. So I think Norwood Together and some of these other places, they have figured out, like, how to do it. And I know the Shakespeare in the Park people have figured that out. Like, they've got it. But it's probably tribal knowledge that just gets passed around. So what I'm going to do for you is I am going to work and get the process, get the forms. I'm going to make sure that, you know how to do it. So that way in the future, when you do want to host movie night at Waterworks, you fill the form out, you put exactly what you need. And if they're not coming through for you when you want to do that, but then they're coming through for another group, then we can really have a discussion there and say, hey, Pastor James, he put exactly what he needed, he put exactly what he wanted, and you didn't come through, but another group did that exact same thing. Like, they put exactly what they needed, exactly what they wanted, and it happened. So then we can really have a discussion about that. But I think we're going to really, if we don't get the process in place, because I think at times it's just just all kinds of issues that happen that kind of come together to mean that it's not going to happen. But by having one place that you go, one form you fill out, one whatever, that can be kind of our guiding path forward, and then we'll know what's happening, what's not. Instead of just this, I talked to this person, I talked to that person, that's not really helping much. I think we're really going to need to get you to get everybody to just, fill out the form, tell the city what you need, and then let the city tell you if they can do it or not.
And my last thing would be, I don't know whether or not you've reached out to Norwood Together, but I would like to see Norwood Together reach out to you, to be honest, and see about working as two separate organizations, but working together as a cooperative unit. That's what we need. If they don't reach out to you and they, you guys end up being separate entities, we're going to keep having this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This group does this group does that. We have to be able to, the groups have to be able to work together for this to work. And that's not for us to say, well, we're not going to work with you, Norwood Together, because you won't work with Elevations. Well, we're not going to work with Elevations because you refuse to work with Norwood Together. We have to be able to work with everybody out there. And yes, I've had my back and forth with ASAP, with Norwood Together, and some of the things that have gone on. Absolutely, I have, because I feel that some of the things have not gone the way they should have. But, like I said, I'm not looking for you to reach out to them as much as I'm looking for both of you to reach out together.
Yeah, but in all due respect to Norwood Together, Mary C. Miller, and I'll go on record saying this, she has done a phenomenal job. That woman has come to my door personally on numerous occasions. She is good for Norwood. Whatever she's doing, I'm going to back her. And so far, she's shown me whatever I'm involved in, she's open to backing us. So I don't want to again, as I addressed earlier, sometimes we say things and we don't mean it that way. So I want to bring clarity. Norwood Together is doing some phenomenal work. In fact, the relationship that we now have with Xavier University would not be where it is without Mary C. Miller. I'm not saying the whole group. I don't know. But I know Mary C. Miller, who is with Norwood Together, has done a phenomenal job supporting us. So I don't want to make this us against them. All I'm trying to show is, if Mr. Bonzo is thinking that it's just about the protocol, guys, I've been at this a long time with other groups. You just don't get to see it. I know protocol. I know how to look at everything we've done. It happens, and I got no support, and it still happened. I know the proper protocol. I'm just going to tell you, next year, when we do the MLK stuff, if you know of somebody in the city right now, they could pull the strings. We've got the funding. I'm not asking the city for a dime, but mark my words, there's somebody watching right now that's going to come up with another great idea and say, oh, well, we should have a right to do it too, after we're talking about working together. So the issue that I'm talking about is, and just another issue that was mentioned tonight, wonderful issue, wonderful, right? Wouldn't everybody agree? So again, doesn't it make us look like we're working on opposite ends if you don't bring the people that are working specifically in that area together right from the beginning? Now we have to be involved in stuff that really is right up my alley. I find out about it at the same time you find out about it. But everybody in the city knows this is definitely something. I don't just do it, I live it. Why is that, gentlemen? And that's all I'm saying we have to address. I'm not saying the city has to.
But there's where we're at here. I don't know who this group is, to be honest, but is this something that you have tried through your nonprofit? Something like this.
Racial healing, sir?
Something like this. I mean,
anything for racial healing, sir?
I'm trying to figure out what your issue with this.
No, I don't have an issue. It's a great idea. I'm saying, if
you're saying that you had this idea,
I didn't,
and somebody else took it.
No, I didn't say that, and that's I need to bring clarity. What I'm saying is, like with what Mr. Bonzo said, the recreation department came to them. Well, who in the city isn't watching, and who in the city doesn't know? We have to level the playing field so that these groups who want to do these projects, why go to an outside group during the month that black people all over the world celebrate, and you take it to a predominantly Caucasian group and say, let's show the movie 42 during Black History Month, while you have a nonprofit showing black culture every week? How do you not put that together?
It's not that we're not putting it together.
No, not you. I'm saying as a general, that's my issue.
But you're putting blame towards us as a council.
No.
When
I don't mean that.
We don't
Matt.
have.
I don't mean that, Matt. I don't mean that, Matt. Let me say. I don't mean that.
Okay. But that's how it's perceived.
And I don't mean that, Matt. My third time. I don't mean that, Matt. What I mean to say is, and I think Mr. Thompson has a very good feel of what the pain that I'm feeling. It's the racial equity that's behind the systemic protocols. And I believe Mr. Kelsch has a genuine heart to see this thing out. And I'm on board to say, however we need to do it, it's not going to be all my liking. It's not going to be just how I want it to be. But it's got to be a way to where when I go somewhere, you won't hear people that you don't even know talk bad about my neighborhood. For what? We've got a lot of good going here. We got a lot of great people here. Everybody's not racist here. Nobody should ever say all of Norwood is racist. That's not fair. That's not true. However, we do have systemic protocols that are walked out or at least strongly perceived. And in closing tonight, let me say, I am willing to come together for an hour, 2 hours, or 50 years. Like the 50 or 100 years that people of color have had to always feel second to status quo. And you don't have to worry about it, because all of your peers on the outside, they'll be coming in with me. And they'll be asking me, what did you just say? What did you just do? Norwood is a small community. There's much larger things out there in the world. If we want to embarrass ourselves, go right ahead. Go right ahead. I don't want to do that. Thank you for your offer. Genuinely and sincerely. Thank you for your offer. Thank you for your openness. Thank you, Mr. Geraci, for wanting to connect the dots. Thank you, Mr. President, for having this. Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson, for speaking your heart. I think we've accomplished all that we can accomplish tonight. I think this is a huge success simply because we're talking about it, and I'm the one standing before you saying, doesn't really matter whether you want to join or not. It's going to happen. And all I want us to do is do it as a family and not divided. I do not want that. And you saw what the divided looks right by Norwood High School just a few days ago. And those are with children. Now you bring in some adults. Number one, I don't think we'd have any chuckling going on at night. I just want us to love each other, forgive each other, and move forward. So, Mr. President, with that, unless there's something else that you or council would ask of me, I'm okay. Mr. Kelch, Mr. Geraci, Mr. Bonzo, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Braden, I'm okay if you all want to close this portion out. I thank God for this tremendous opportunity and platform. I think, though, there's still more on the table that we have not touched, and it's not going to happen in one bite. It's not going to happen overnight. But economic inclusion has got to happen. And when you bring the powers to be together, you're going to see there's not a level playing field. You're going to see it's not fair. You're going to see what I'm really talking about. Just bring them all together. They're your friends. Invite them. And say, hey, why don't we go? And when we do, we pick out one item and we hammer it together as a community. And we work it out as a community. If it takes us 13 months, 12 months, okay, we'll be further advanced than back and forth. And we're living proof, man. They should put us as the poster children. You don't always have to agree. But at the end of the day, you can respect each other, respect each other's opinions, and live to see tomorrow. And when you mention Dominique, how could I ever call you a racist? How could I? When people talk about you in this neighborhood, ask them what I tell them. If they're bold enough. I don't hide behind it. I live this. And I don't like unfairness for anybody, no matter what color, no matter who they're related to. And as most people in this city have seen, as the young people say on the street, I ain't scared. Let's not talk about it. Let's be about it. Let's be about change. Thank you, Mr. President, for
Thank you, Pastor James.
hosting this. I love my community, guys. I love my 9-year-old daughter. I'd like for her to have a fair shot at maybe being the mayor here one day. Unless there's anything else, Mr. Kelch, thank God for the residents that have been patient to listen in. And Thank God for the administration to at least open the door for this. Anybody who didn't like it tonight, I'm sorry. Not sorry that you didn't like it. I'm just
Okay, so I
sorry.
think, are we,
Thank you all, and I'm
Thank you.
done.
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just said thank you. No, I appreciate it.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you were
No,
addressing.
you're
it.
fine, you're fine.
Mr. Miracle?
We're gonna move on to items 2 and 3.
I'm gonna propose that since I brought those next two items up, that, we table them, and, I'll bring them up at old business during our next council meeting.
Old business, next council meeting. Very well then. That's everything we had on the agenda this evening, so we're adjourned.